We're combining all the best old school wisdom with all the top new school methods to bring you the optimal way to coach and play the great game of baseball. This is the 80-20 Baseball Masterclass with Coach Bo.
Welcome 80-20 baseball coaches. Yeah, I'm back here, Coach Bo, ready to rock with this episode 41. And this is part 2 of a 3-part series, a 3-part mini series with Coach Colter Bostick. We got Coach Colter with us, and we're going to get into how to build the athletic pitcher, how to build a pitcher that moves better on the mound. So we're going to get into that here with Coach Colter, Coach Bostick, and after we talk to Coach Bostick about building and creating a more athletic pitcher, a more athletic pitching staff, I'm going to get into part 2 of this episode, but it's going to be part 2 of the drill mastery guide, how to create the optimal drill. Put a lot of time into this. We've gone over part 1, relevancy. Now it's going to be on to section 2, part 2, time allotment. Each one of these parts is necessary to understand to build incredibly great drills, incredibly great practice environments. There is a step-by-step process that can be used to build perfect drills. This is one of a kind, I think. I think there's a lot of people who share good drills, but those don't always fit for every level or every practice or every field. I'm going to give you a script. I'm going to give you these steps so you can build elite drills from scratch anytime, anywhere. So we're going to get into that here in episode 41 after we talk to Coach Colter Bostick. So we got Colter on the line here, and Colter, you have done an amazing job with your pitchers, and I know you train elite pitchers, but you train in groups, you train in kind of like a team environment, although it's not necessarily what you would call a team with a jersey of all the same colors and stuff and the same name, but you're out there training in a team environment. You've had a lot of success. In fact, you had quite a few players recently commit to some great colleges. I'd love to hear more about that. Share with us, the listeners, the success stories that you're having with these college commitments, which are a great achievement for your players and for yourself.
We've been very fortunate to have a lot of athletes that have committed to go to school on their way or will be on their way in the next few years. I will say, though, it is absolutely a team effort in terms of the support system for the athlete, in terms of the things that are necessary to help get that person there. But it is 100%, it's a testament to the athlete when they make that commitment. I refuse to take credit for athletes getting committed. I try as hard as we can to deflect and make sure that people understand that it is the athlete's accomplishment and they deserve everything that they earn. And it's not my job to say, oh, look what Colter did. There's no place for that. It's, hey, look at what that kid just accomplished. And I'm so happy for him. I'm so proud for him. And I'm excited to see what his future holds. I think that's the biggest part of what I do in terms of seeing these kids' hard work come to fruition, is making sure that they understand that it is their hard work. I'm honored to just have a small slice of it.
Well, I know coaches like you and guys like you are always trying to give the credit back to the player, but I think it's important that, yes, the player is going to be the bulk of the responsibility for their career, for their time out on the field, and they should be accountable. But I'll tell you what, coaches are a massive part of that, and great coaching is a massive part of that, and you're doing a great job. I saw you posted, when you post on Twitter, it's not about you. In fact, it's always a shout out to your players, and it's always kind of putting the spotlight on your players, and I love that. And you put out there the college commitments to those players, and I know that's a big deal for these players, because for a lot of them, it's a bigger deal than graduating high school. In fact, they want to graduate high school, and that's important, but having that commitment to college is almost something that they wear on their sleeve even bigger and brighter, and it's something that they're always fired up about. I know when I committed and I signed a scholarship with Long Beach State back in 1998, I was more ecstatic about that day than graduating. Graduating was like, ho-hum, big deal. It is a big deal. Graduating high school is a big thing, but it wasn't. I hit it. It had been dwarfed by my college commitment and college scholarship opportunity. So,
well, yeah, it's a personal accomplishment. I don't want to belittle the high school graduation, but I would say, like, that's the expectation. If you attend school, you just do the bare minimum, you will still end up graduating. But if you go to practice and do the bare minimum, you are not getting that scholarship. You are not getting that opportunity to move on. So yeah, it's a special place knowing, hey, all eyes are on me because of my accomplishment. And when I put my name on this paper, it's solidifying that I have done my job and I still get to keep going and playing this game.
Absolutely. And you know what? Those athletes that don't have that opportunity out of, and I know if they're working with you, they got a much better opportunity to get that up, to go right to a school of their liking, a school that they want to go to, and a school that has a great athletic program, a great college. But if you're not one of those athletes that's going there, if your son or daughter, you're listening to this, or you're coaching younger players that aren't quite there, don't sweat it. There's so many players that they don't really lack the hard work ethic. And I know, Colter, you instill that with your players. A lot of these players that don't, not the players you're working with, but other players, there's just a whole group of players that they don't have the success right out of high school or in high school, and they're late bloomers. I could give you a dozen names off the top of my head that are all major leaguers, some of them all-stars, some of them Hall of Famers that weren't always, the big names coming out. Albert Pujols is a big one. He went to community college, junior college, and that's a really successful route for a lot of players, and it's a great way. So there's definitely no way you want to just put this blanket statement that you have to go to Division I, you have to go to Division II, you have to go to a four-year school. But I'll tell you what, you're putting out a lot of players to four-year schools. That's ideal. That would be optimal. It's not necessary for every athlete to get there. It's definitely advantageous, and you're doing a great job. Colter, what are some of the schools that some of your guys have recently committed to?
We've had guys throughout. Most kids here in Texas want to stay regional. So if we're talking about big schools in the Big 12, that's always a prime destination for guys. But we also have a lot of really good D2s, D3s, and a ton of junior colleges of value. And there's no value in trying to name explicit schools, because it's not a competition for, hey, I'm going to TCU and you're going to such and such junior college. No, man, congratulations. You have the opportunity to go to a really great university, and that other guy has the opportunity to go and keep playing baseball, and he very well could earn his spot there. Maybe it wasn't the right time. Maybe he wasn't the right place for his development. Like, it's not a competition. It is a competition when you're talking about,
you're right.
In the long run, but it's an accomplishment no matter what you do and where you go. And so long as you are happy and successful, it doesn't really matter.
Yes.
Like, there are guys playing in the big leagues that went to no-name junior colleges or like out in the backwoods D3s. They're still playing Major League Baseball. It did not hurt them going to this school. It's just about the right fit, the right time, and the right place.
I think you said that perfect, or the right fit for all the athletes. In fact, I knew athletes growing up that could have easily gone to Division I that opted not to go to Division I because of the way the draft works with Division I baseball, and they wanted to go play a year of junior college ball. They know the quality of baseball and junior college ball in a lot of states. I know Texas, definitely, California, definitely, and a lot of other states. Junior college ball is super competitive. There's a lot of scouts looking, and they wanted to get back in the draft the next year. They wanted to, not take that 3-year, 2-year, 4-year risk or other things. They wanted to get back. They really wanted to get into professional baseball. They really had this love of baseball. So you're right. The opportunity is going to unfold differently for everybody. And not every Division I or Division II or Division III college is a good fit for each and every player. It depends on what's a good fit for you or Colter or for your athletes or for me or whoever. And I think you make a good point. But I will say this. I saw that list. You had some pretty big names on there, pretty big names of colleges, but you also do, I'll tell you what, you probably pump up the athletes that are going to some of the lesser known names, but not necessarily lesser quality programs, because, man, I'll tell you what, some of the greatest baseball coaches in college history come from schools that you haven't heard of or you don't really know about. And if you're listening, and this is kind of more of a youth baseball focused podcast, you most likely haven't heard of some of these coaches from some of these colleges. You've heard of them, maybe the Augie Garridos and some of these bigger names, but you haven't heard of the schools that are back in the back. But these coaches are phenomenal, and they're developing players. And just go look at the draft and look at where they come from. So, yeah, you're going to see a higher propensity of SEC and Pac-12, yada, yada, yada. But, Big 12, but if you look closely, you would be shocked at how many players come from all over, from all levels of college. And I'll tell you what, you're right. You do have a really nice list of colleges, very colorful, a lot of different. And I like how your players are going to different, I don't know, a dozen names the other day that are players, kids that are going to college, and none of them were the same. I don't think I saw the same college twice. And that's a testament about each of these players going, I'm going to go where it fits me best. And it always is interesting when I hear this Division I or this. I went to Division I baseball, but I'll tell you what, I'll be the first, and I can speak because I was there. You don't have to do that. I know so many players that's not the route they took, and they were so successful and just as successful as they would have been had they gone to a big name college. So, but yeah, Colt, you got a lot of good college. I know we weren't going to necessarily talk about that kind of the college component for youth players, but I think that was good how we kind of hit on that. So you do have a lot of great success stories throughout, and I love it. But you pump up those players that are going to some of those other colleges that I'm actually not super familiar with, because some of them are, like you said, local to like San Antonio, local to Texas. So some of the Division III, some of the Division II, some of the junior colleges, I haven't heard their names as much. And you pump those players up as much as the guys that are going to TCU and those schools. So that's pretty cool. I love that you do that. Colt, you fire me up, man. You fire me up. I'm glad to have you back here. Let's get into athletic pitchers. They look fluid. They look really good at moving on the mound. Tell us about that. What are you doing with them, and maybe some success stories and things like that?
Well, the overall idea of developing the optimal pitcher. There's no such thing as developing the ideal pitcher. There's no the best pitcher. It's the optimal pitcher. Who is this individual athlete? What is going to help make him the best version of himself that he can be? And it's not everyone is going to mimic the Justin Verlander delivery. Not everyone's going to be able to move as well as Garrett Cole. Not everyone's going to be able to throw the seamless gas that freaking Jacob deGrom is putting out there right now. Like, everybody's going to be a little bit different. So understanding the underlying base principles of movement and I guess you can call them the core benchmark things that we're looking for. If we can accomplish those and let the kids utilize their own individual athleticism, we're going to usually have a lot of success. I'm a big believer in getting the body down the slope in the most efficient, but also I guess I'm not going to say the quickest, because some guys don't necessarily need to move fast, but getting down the mound in the best amount of time so that they can sequence the rest of their body properly. Like, if we can get energy going into the direction of the plate, we're going to put more energy through the baseball. If we're delaying or we're dispersing energy in different directions, we're not helping the overall cause that we're trying to attack. So I try to get my guys to understand the fundamental aspects of, hey, this is where I'm going. These are the key pieces that I need to focus on as I'm moving. And if I can get numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 to all happen in a chain reaction without having to think about it, then I have accomplished my goal. And that's what you're seeing in a lot of these videos, is they're syncing things up and they're letting their athleticism the spotlight on the mound. They're not trying to out effort the ball. They're just letting their body do their job.
Do you set it up do you kind of break it into parts initially, or do you kind of add maybe a key phrase, or do you add things as you go, or do you kind of break it up when you introduce maybe an athletic windup or an athletic delivery?
Well, so it's kind of a time and place situation. So like at this very moment, most of my guys are taking the next 6 to 10 weeks off from throwing. We're giving their arm a break. And what we're doing is we're getting them in the weight room, trying to add strength, focusing on teaching them mobility, understanding their bodies a little bit better. None of this is going to be mechanics. This is going to be, hey, we're going to go move weight. We're going to get stronger. We're going to make sure that you guys stay healthy. And then there's the side aspect of the training where we go through these drills, either med ball throws, we're doing plyos, we're doing PVC pipe work on the mound, just trying to teach the body how to move, not specifically saying you have to be here and here and here. We're trying to teach how to blend that strength with the mobility and trying to get them to feel comfortable doing the work. And then all of a sudden, when we put the ball back in their hands here in October or whatever, rather than having to coach them and say, hey, you need to reach this position, I want you to just feel that athleticism and watch how it grows. But if we're talking 2 months ago or 3 months ago, when we're in kind of that limbo stage of, hey, I need to be ready to compete and whatnot, then we're talking about critical movements according to the individual athlete. Some kids may naturally hinge in their hip well and get their center of mass going down the slope properly. Some kids may cave into their back leg and struggle to get their energy to go down the mound. They're trying to fight the slope. So I'm going to cue that kid much differently than I would cue the other guy that's getting his body down the slope more efficient. And like I said, it goes back to the end goal is I want the movement pieces from the ground up, 1 through 7, whatever it may be. I want them to all activate and fire in the right order at the right time without having to overthink the process.
I'll tell you what, you're solid, Colter, because pitching is the area that I played and I coached for a long time. And it's really kind of my area of, I feel like I know baseball really well across the board, but it's definitely my area of all areas that I study and understand the best. And I'll tell you what, you hit a home run with your explanation. And in my opinion, I believe how you broke it down with your attack, your approach to pitching and building an athletic athletic pitcher or better pitcher was spot on. You said you're giving them a break from throwing, but you really, more importantly, what you said, which is huge, giving their arm a rest throughout the year, but you're not taking time off. You're getting them in there to build athletic movement in the weight room. Maybe it's out on the field, but it could be out on the football field. You're building athletic movers off of the mound, but you're also tying in some stuff on the mound with the PVC, but it's not throwing. It's not where they have to worry about the grip and they have to worry about spin rate and velocity. They can focus simply on the movement, especially the movements of their core and their legs and how they're moving with their center of gravity. So really, I think that's, to me, is the game changer when it comes to, for example, you could wait until January and start trying to teach quality movement, but it's too late if they can't. I taught thousands of pitchers over the year. I coached thousands of pitchers, and the dad or mom would come and say, hey, how do I get him the longer straw? How do I get this? He seems to be a little up. That's not something he's just going to fix out here. I can change his script, right? I can change the ratio of pitches he's throwing. I can get him to stride a little further, a little straighter, to a little more directional with the play. But the quality of his movement, it needs to start on a routine in the weight room, or for younger players, maybe just in the backyard or in the garage. But I love to hear that, Colter. That is a game changer when the approach should be get them better as movers off of the mound. And you can do it simultaneously with some mound work, sure. But well before you get them out there really with the ball, and then a lot more things come to mind. And I'm telling you, I'm a big fan of Driveline and some of the stuff they're doing. A lot of these, like these kind of major league level places that are doing this stuff. In fact, I toured Driveline not that long ago. I saw their guys in action, but they are working with guys that have already mastered 90% of the pitching delivery, 90% of the game. And so what I would say to youth players is if you're sitting there trying to get the extra little bit out of your spin rate, but you got terrible movement quality, your pitchers seem to have great. First thing I look at when I see you post videos of your guys to say good things about them, I'm looking down. I'm looking at their feet. I'm looking at their stride. I'm looking at their center of gravity. I'm looking at their hip hinge, their hip angle. I'm looking at their head movement. I'm looking at their posture. I don't even look at their arm so much as I'll look at the arm initially, but when I see ball, I don't watch ball as a result. I see it as a symptom. The ball will tell you almost everything. You do this long enough like you and I have. You can see any pitch. You don't have to see. I could watch a pitch and have a screen in front of the pitcher and not see the pitcher. And I could probably tell you 90% of the time something that's going wrong that caused that. The pitch is just a symptom. It's a result. Once you've let go of it, you've done all your work, like you've talked about on this podcast before. So I think building the pitcher in the weight room, I love to hear that, Colter. And then the second part was you get out there and then you address things individually with each pitcher as they come about. So you address the major movers, the major athletic movements in there with the plyo balls, but also the med balls. And I know you're doing stuff with the legs and the posture, and then you're getting with the PVCs, working on them, going down the mound a little with the PVC, not necessarily throwing, but working on their posture, their core, and the movements, the rotation. And then you're getting them out there on the mound, and you're doing, and I think it's so important for coaches listening to this, break it down first with the strength and conditioning and get the movement quality better. Back to finish up my point about I was coaching pitchers, and I was like, look at their dad or mom. And I said, he can't do that yet. He physically can't do what he needs to do. And so there's so many pitching coaches that try to change it, or they try to do this, and it's like, you can't fix him because he doesn't have the hip strength. He doesn't have the mobility in it. It's usually a hip issue for most things, or it's a strength in the core, the quads, the glutes, right? And they don't have the strength to do it. And so it's like trying to get somebody to dunk and they just don't have the jump. They can't get up. You need to go work on the vertical before you try to teach them how to slam it through or do a tomahawk or reverse. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I just got done watching this YouTube video that just popped up about Tom House. And he kind of talks about the history of what got Tom House to be Tom House. And he mentions how he was working with Nolan Ryan and whatnot. He had known Randy Johnson from when he was coaching at USC. And he said that he and Nolan were out working one day and they were listening and they heard Randy Johnson just throwing steam balls down there. And they went over and asked him how everything was going. He said, man, I'm struggling right now. I can't seem to be able to do whatever issue it was. And they're like, well, all right, how about we work with you the next day? Comes out, Tom House says that he made an adjustment on Randy Johnson's stride. That's a great thing that he's able to see and do that. But it's also an impressive thing that Randy Johnson was able to make that adjustment. But he was a mature athlete. He's an adult, despite being 6'10". I'm sure he was pretty strong. The dude was a monster. I can't do that with a 15-year-old kid. I can't tell him, hey, we've got to adjust this part of your stride because you're not in a position to be able to generate energy back up your front leg. We've got to be able to build that strength, and we've got to teach you what that means to drive that energy back up the chain from the front leg. I can't just just tell you to get to a position because you're going to force that position rather than trying to actually just move athletically and make that a result. There's a big difference between that mature athlete that has an understanding and control of his body versus the youth athlete, or I would just say the amateur athlete that doesn't have that ability. And the worst thing we can do is tell a person to do an action that is going to disrupt the entire rest of the chain. I think that's why cues are so valuable, and the way we phrase things is rather than saying you need to have your foot right here or your arm needs to get right here, I'm going to give you a cue that tries to influence you to move the way I want to, or tries to get you to feel the thing I want to, rather than forcing you to make a physical disruption that will inevitably screw everything else up. So there's a really big difference between that and understanding where your athlete is at and how they're going to be able to interpret what change you're trying to make.
That is well put. I'll tell you what, the cues following the mobility and the strength training and conditioning off the field or kind of out of that traditional practice and bullpen environment, I'll tell you what, you couple that and then you add the cues with it, which is I love the cues. And I think what you said was so spot on. Coaches, you're listening to this, your cues may be different for all your players, or say you have 5 pitchers that have the same thing you're trying to get better at, or you have 3 pitchers that are trying to get better with the same they have the same thing going wrong or the same kind of faulty movement, and you're trying to fix the same thing on all 3. You might have a different cue for all 3 of those because you're trying to get them to wrap their mind and then try to then take it and actually apply it. So I think that's huge insofar as that you want them to kind of mentally grasp it and then apply it through. And the problem is the delivery goes so fast. Even the slowest delivery, you're just talking a few seconds here. And so players don't have a lot of time to be thinking about a lot of things. So you got to hit a home run. You got to be really good with your cue, and you might test out certain things. Keep it short, like you said, keep it short and sweet, something short and sweet that they can go to and grasp, especially out there in the middle of competition in a quick movement. Man, I'll tell you what, Tom House is, I'm certified National Pitching Association pitching instructor. I went years ago and spent 4 full days with Tom, and, it was great. I've been following Tom for almost 20 years now. He was like the godfather of weighted balls and all this stuff before all these other guys came along. He was doing this stuff a long time before. He's such a smart guy. Now, there's something I don't necessarily agree with Tom, and I know you didn't sound like it was about going fast. They talk a lot about going fast, like pitchers moving fast. What's your take on that? Like, for example, they say just go fast. They go fast, like move fast to the plate. And what's your take on like tempo and delivery and going fast?
I like up-tempo dynamic deliveries, period. What up-tempo means to a given athlete is not the same as what up-tempo means to a different athlete. A guy that is 5'10" is going to move a lot faster down the mound than a guy that is 6'9", because the limbs have to take a different course to get on time and get down the slope. Now, can they both still throw out of the stretch with a 1-3 or below? Yes, but there's a different set of timing mechanisms that require that. So I want guys to have an up-tempo delivery, meaning they are getting their engine going and their goal is to get down the mound. But we have to have essence of patience to make sure that the body is on time. And then when the body's on time, then we can get into the essence of violence, where we exert our energy and we just throw the ball as hard as we can. You have to have 2 different aspects all under the same umbrella of having a good tempo down the mound.
You got a great grasp on this. In my opinion, I think you got a great grasp on relating to players and all around baseball, but man, you got a great grasp on this pitching thing. And I'll tell you what, any pitcher that's working with you, anybody that can get to working with you, they are doing well or they're lucky. And I think it's not all one. I love how it's just like for me, the going fast, like you said it perfectly, smaller pitchers, shorter pitchers are going to be able to get away with going faster because their limb, their arm, specifically their arm, their throwing arm, it's going to have to move. Its arm path is going to be a little bit longer. Now that'll vary. Some are Jared Weaver and some guys are a little quicker to bringing it up, but each pitcher, especially the tall guys, can't necessarily go as fast because they got a little stuff they got to work on the backside. They got to work through on the backside. The one thing about the going fast was what you hit on is that if you tell your pitcher just to pitch fast, like go fast, I think my focus would be go as fast as you can. Like you said, Colter, so long as the timing syncs up. Because if a lot of times I see pitchers try to rush through and their arms dragging through, or it whips through artificially, it kind of gets whipped through. So either the ball goes up and in, right? It's up and arm side and in, or I should say up and arm side, or it gets yanked down and away from arm side, i.e. glove side. And so those are 2, that's a lot of the arm the arm usually is never ahead of the body. It's never like, hey, body, you ready to go? Hey, legs, you ready to go? It's usually always, if there's an issue with timing, it's usually the throwing arm is still doing some some work. It's still in external rotation. The shoulder's in external rotation. It's still in layback, or it's not quite, or the fingers aren't where they need to be at release. But the lower half is way bigger than the arm, way stronger. And so the arm is really along for the ride in a lot of ways. And so I love how you said that. And coaches that are working with pitchers, go back and listen to what he just said, Colter, what Coach Bostick talked about the last 10 minutes right there. Hit that again. You want to take some notes. Now to finish up the athletic pitcher, what are some things just to finish up? Anything we haven't hit on as far as things that I know you've had a lot of success building athletic fluid deliveries. Is there anything you didn't hit that you think the listeners should hear?
I think that's pretty much covered the topic. I think it's very important from a developmental standpoint, from a coaching or otherwise, to have a couple of check boxes that you want to check within a delivery. Trying to simplify, but also know what is and is not going to be available for each athlete. So I will not say this is originally my idea. I've learned a lot of this stuff from having great mentors in the game. But when I'm watching pitchers, I'm looking for 4 different points in their delivery that tell me that it's going to be healthy, it's going to be projectable, and explains why they're doing what they're doing. Anything else beyond that, I'm just sitting there giving bonus points. So if I'm watching a kid and he hits all 4 of these checkpoints, but he just goes really slow down the mound, is he successful? Is he getting the job done? Is he throwing strikes? Is he executing? Great. Well, I'm going to let him keep doing that. If he's only hitting 1 out of the 4 and he's going really slow down the mound and he's not producing at the plate, yeah, we've got some things we need to work on and start fixing and start getting in there. So I hold these 4 things as a standard and then build off of it from who the athlete is as an individual, not a cookie cutter. Everybody has to be this exact same thing.
I think having a checklist is whether you write it down. So maybe like for you, you're so immersed in it, you have it written down, you've got so much experience. Maybe if you're a youth coach, you have a checklist, or I recommend writing it down. You go out to the bullpen, you have a checklist of things you're looking for. I look feet up. I always look feet up. The main thing I want to see is stride direction, but that typically comes after. The first thing I'm looking at is center of gravity and the posture. Where the center of gravity is, I want to see the hip and the glutes out in front a little bit. I know some guys talk about the back hip. So if you're right-handed, it'd be like a right-handed pitcher, you'd be at the right hip, and how that kind of hinge and sinks onto the hip. I think the sink actually will work itself out so long as you get the glute and the front pelvis and the hip going first to the plate, kind of like a whip. So you're letting that go, the center of mass go forward before your head and your arms start to come forward. I like to see that. Your guys do an outstanding job of that, Colter. All your pitchers do an outstanding job. And then I want to see stride direction. So you're getting momentum and direction. Those are the 2 big things I look for. And then from there, a lot of the other stuff kind of works itself out. The arm will kind of work itself out. And there's definitely things you can adjust, like you said, individually kind of coach each thing. But I like to have a checklist when I go out there. Now, a lot of this stuff goes into the weight room. Then I have a checklist. All right, what are we doing? We got to do our single leg work. We got to do mobility work. We got to have good rotational work, med ball stuff. So there's checklists. I love checklists. In fact, if you haven't read the Checklist Manifesto, coaches are listening to this, go read the Checklist Manifesto. It doesn't mention the word sport. It doesn't mention the word baseball. It's actually written by a doctor. I believe it's Atul Gawande, and I'm not saying it perfect, but you go look up the Checklist Manifesto. He's a doctor who implemented checklists in hospitals, and he saved thousands and thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of lives already. I think they've kind of figured it out, like how many lives he saved just by having checklists in a hospital. I know pitching is not life and death, but it could be career. It could be the death of a career if you don't have a certain checklist. So I think there are some things, and you can email me at coachbo@8020baseball.com, and I can work with you on that. Or I think a great resource is Colter. I know, Colter, you said the best way to get to you, and if you're not following Colter yet, you got to go follow him on Twitter. He's at maximized _ B as in baseball, S as in stolen base or sack fly, and B as in baseball. So at maximized _ BSB. Go follow him. He's putting out great stuff. So if you're a coach who works with pitchers or you're a pitcher yourself, follow him. I know you're already following other people. I'm telling you, you're going to get more out from. There's a lot of great people to follow, but Colter's one of those you want to have on the top of your list of who you want to stay with. So Colter, man, you got some great stuff. Your pitchers are super athletic. And I tell you what, as soon as you finish listening to this episode, listeners, go and just, if you don't have Twitter, sign up and don't follow a bunch of random people and all that news and all that sad stuff. Go to Colter, follow him. him. And if you want to follow me. And, there's some other good ones that look who Colter might follow, interact with, and maybe follow them. But I'll tell you what, Colter's one you want to follow. Man, Colter, you always got good stuff. You're always positive. And one of these times when you're up here in Boise, I got to have you come over. We'll do some steaks. And I can't guarantee you barbecue like they do down there in Texas, but I'll try my best.
I appreciate it, my friend. Actually, I'm looking to get up north here sometime in the next few months. My wife wants to go see snow, so Boise may be on the target.
Well, if it is, you got to let me know. Give me a buzz, and I'll have you come by. So thanks, Colter, for your time. And Colter's going to be back in the next episode. We're going to talk about how great players and great coaches and great people focus on controlling the things they can't control. And we'll talk about how controlling the circle of influence makes better players, makes better coaches and teams. And we'll get to that. That'll be episode 42. Colter, thank you so much for your time.
I appreciate it.
I'll tell you what, it's always great to have Coach Bostick on. You're just a positive guy, positive influence. Now, for part 2 of this episode, I'm going to discuss the second part of the 8 steps, the second step to the 8 steps of the drill mastery guide that I created, spent a lot of time building. Will be available on the website 8020 Baseball shortly. I'll let you know on these podcasts and I'll tweet it out. You can follow me at 8020_baseball, or you can email me at coachbo@8020baseball.com. Definitely go follow Bostick on his Twitter. He puts out a lot of good stuff. Now for part 2 of this, which is section 2 of our drill mastery guide. Here we go. The key question you must ask yourself when building a great drill is how much practice time should each training drill or each skill that you're learning be allotted? This is super important. This is the 80-20 principle. They're not all equal. Not all drills, not all skills, not all situations are equal. In fact, none of them are equal. They're all a little bit different on the spectrum of importance and how much they're going to influence your team culture and the scoreboard. So here we go. Once the essential skills have been identified, the practice time must now be divided up relative to how frequently those skills are needed during a game. Let me repeat that. Once the essential skills have been identified, the practice time must now be divided up relative to how frequently those skills are needed during a game. Each skill is trained through a drill. Thus, and you can call it whatever you want, they're drills. That's what, when you train a skill, it's a drill, an exercise drill, a throwing drill, a hitting drill, a footwork drill. Drills are drills. I just use the word drill. It's an acute specific training period. Each skill is trained through a drill. Thus, each drill's duration should line up with how often it occurs in a game, or should I say in a typical game. In other words, the time allotted for each drill relative to the total length of practice should mirror the ratio between how much impact that particular skill has on the number of runs produced by your team's offense or the number of runs prevented by your team's pitching staff, your pitchers, and defense. It is possible to break it down to a ratio of repetitions, but using time allocation works just fine. So you could break it down into the ratio of repetitions, but using time works just fine. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's almost impossible to get it exactly perfect. You're gonna pull your hair out, but you want to be really close with your time allocation towards specific skills and how they influence the outcomes of games and your team culture. Of course, getting the ratio perfect, like I said, is not necessary nor practical, but making an educated guess is very much worthwhile. That's what we're going to do here. Now that you understand the goal, we have made it easy for you by including the following priority list of general skills that is typically needed every game. Number 1, hitting/bunting. I'm not a big bunter. I like a drag bunt, especially when that third baseman is giving it to you. Definitely like a drag bunt, but I think, or a push bunt for a base hit. Even in sacrifice situations, I would personally only teach a drag bunt or a push bunt, trying to get a base hit. So in sacrifice situations, I would work that. If you work that all the time rather than sack bunts, you could have some pretty good drag bunters and some pretty good push bunters. I'm a big push bunt, drag bunt fan. So hitting is the main component, by far the main component, I think, of any of the skills. Then pitching and the throwing routine and the throwing and the stuff that goes along with pitching are right there. So it's 1A, 1B. And it just depends on maybe what your team needs, depending on your strength. So no matter your team, those are 1A and 1B. But if you have stronger pitchers with more experience, maybe you focus a little more on hitting or vice versa. Number 3, catching, pitch receiving, blocking. So catching, to me, that's huge. That's just massive. Then number 4, defensive throwing. defensive throwing. You can couple this with number 5, or it could be 4A is defensive throwing, and number 5 is fielding ground balls. Number 6 is base running. Notice I didn't put fly balls in there because there's a lot more ground balls than fly balls in a typical game. Now, I know with this fly ball revolution, the launch angle change about, there are more fly balls now, but it's still definitely more ground balls than fly balls. Number 6, base running. So number 7 is fly balls, line drives, pop-ups. Number 8, pickoffs, holding runners. Number 9, defensive relay throws, and that kind of ties in, or I should say is tied with number 10. It could be flip-flop, bunt defense, first and third defense. Here's what I mean, or some of you guys are going, well, why you put bunt defense, first and third defense at the end? First and third defense, bunt defense, first and third offense. Those should be down at the bottom. First and third offense and first and third defense could go together. You could work those together, but bunt defense, I think you just have 1 or 2, maybe 1 bunt defense, maybe a second bunt defense to keep the other team guessing, and you just get really good at it. If you have 4, like most teams have 4 bunt defenses, I've coached teams and been on teams where we 6 bunt defenses, 7, but no. Just have 1 or 2 and just be really good at it. And at the end of the day, you just say, you crash. Here's the lead runner. This is where we're trying to go. Here's option B, play it first or whatnot, or just get the out. Let's not overcomplicate this, and let's not worry about it too much. We should worry about being good at defense against the bunt and our first and third defense, but it's not going to make or break your season for the most part if you don't have 5 to 10 bunt defenses and 5 to 10 first and third defenses. What about an arm fake and a throwdown? That's it. You don't need to throw it back to the pitcher. You don't need to do a throw to the shortstop. Now, those are all options, but I prefer you just get really good at 2, get a really good arm fake, or throw it down and get the out. 1 through 6 of that list, so you can go back and listen to that. 1 through 6 should be trained most often, the 80% of the time. That's the 80 of the 80-20. And 7 through 10 would be your 20% or your 10%. So you could do a 90-10 ratio or 80-20. The key thing here is to understand that not all skills need to be learned in the same volume. There are things that are more important, and even on an individual level, arm strength for pitchers, command. Okay, pickoff moves is not going to get you a scholarship or drafted, or a bad pickoff move. Now, I'm not saying go out there and have bad pickoff moves. What I'm saying is don't go spend half your bullpen time or half your practice time working on pickoffs. Getting strikes, throwing with command, some good, decent velocity if you can. That's not always necessary. Having second pitches, third pitch, a good breaking ball with depth, good changeup, things we've talked about in the previous episodes about pitching. Those are the things that are really the big game changers. It's important to understand that not everything is equal and that we allocate our time accordingly. This is just common sense, but it's not very common in the baseball world. Routinely go to practices, and the first and third offense and defense is 30 to 40 minutes, or it's 20 minutes and then they have bunt defense, which is another 20 or 30 minutes. Now, not every practice, but good chunks of time. In my opinion, definitely, and according to the statistics of the probabilities and the influences these plays have on games, it's practiced too much. Don't mistake what I'm saying. I'm not saying it shouldn't be practiced. It should just be practiced less. Have fewer plays, have fewer options, get really good at them, and don't waste your time with your drills. Be very efficient. That's one way to be really good in a short amount of time also with those. So at the youth level, there is no need to get distracted by the rare plays. At the youth level, even through high school, there's no need to get distracted by the rare play. So if you have something go wrong in your last game, but it was a rare play, don't go feel like you need to go practice that. Stick to the things that are going to be the big needle movers. Get really good at that. So don't get distracted by the rare plays, and there's no need to dedicate practice time to the skills and tactics associated with those isolated plays. Even at the higher levels with 5+ practices per week, I would still caution against using valuable practice time on unique plays. A caveat to that would be if your tough upcoming opponent frequently tries a unique set of plays. So a team that is very competitive, some team that you play often, and they're upcoming on the schedule, and they frequently try something, a unique set of plays, and they've had success in the past against you with it or other teams, and you think it may have a significant impact on the game's outcome, then yeah, okay, go for that. So to counter those moves, spend some time before the game also with those, say 5 minutes before the game or 10 minutes at the practice the day before the game, showing the team exactly what it will look like, and then give them a simple checklist of steps to stop it. Well, hey, we're going to do X, Y, and Z, and we're going to hammer boom, boom, boom. We're going to not get too distracted by that, because at the end of the day, if we can't hit and we can't pitch with command, we can't catch the ball, if our catching behind the plate isn't very good, we can't play defense, ground balls, and we can't base run, none of these little isolated plays are really going to come back to get us in the meat for the most part. And if you get your hitting a lot better, and your pitching a lot better, and your catchers a lot better, and your ground ball fielding a lot better, and your base running a lot better, well, then your margin of error is going to not be reliant, and you're going to have a much bigger margin of error, so you don't have to worry about these one play or this one first and third blunder that you guys had, or that you didn't cover right on a bunt defense, all right? So hammer out the things that are really going to move the needle on offense and on the other side in terms of pitching and defense. So here are tips. Here are 3 tips, my 3 main tips to help maximize your training drill time. Number 1, for each drill, use the timer on your cell phone, or better yet, use a watch or Apple Watch or some kind of watch or stopwatch or Fitbit. This will help you stay on course during a busy practice. Set it and forget it in terms of the time. Number 2, time all transitions between drills. Speed up the time in between, the dead time between drills, so this will allow you to allocate more time, and so you can then cover some of these little things without having to totally just put them off to the side and not get to them. For example, time all ball collecting, and have, for example, as a punishment or recourse, have the team bear crawl 100 feet if it's an older group, or 60 feet if it's a younger group. I think 60 feet and back, so 120 feet or 100 feet and back, if that time deadline is not met. That's an example. I'm a big bear crawl fan. If you've listened to these episodes, if you read some of my articles, you know I'm a big fan of the bear crawl. I think it's a great extrinsic motivator. So time all transitions between drills, so you're not wasting those gaps between drills, so that'll allow you to allocate more time to your drill. And number 3, only use the best drills you have for each skill. No need to have 5 different ground ball drills. Have a couple that are just solid. In fact, have one with some variation within that drill that covers all the moves. Again, you shouldn't be practicing a bunch of triple play ground balls where you're hitting balls at third base and you're spinning around, touching third, throwing to second, throwing to first. Get a lot of throws across to first base, fewer throws turning double plays, and maybe that occasional throw where there's going to be like a shortstop in the back in the 5-6 hole, maybe making a play to third, but that should just be a couple reps versus 15 to 20 reps from across a diamond, of a throw from the shortstop across a diamond, or from third base across a diamond to first base. All right, so allocate it according to how often it works. Only use your best drills. Do not have a bunch of different drills. 2 is more than enough. 1 really good drill, maybe a second. I think 1 really good drill with some variation is awesome and probably the best way to go, but having 2, now these aren't training strategies with individual players. You might try different things like with T-work and things. I'm talking about team drills here. Ideally, by month 2 or by even month 1, you can yell out as a coach, you can yell out the name of the drill, and immediately the players will know exactly what equipment they'll need, exactly what they need to do to set up the field, and exactly where they need to go to start the drill. So it just speeds it up. So having fewer drills, you're not running through it too much. You can save a fun drill here and there, but I highly recommend you have one drill that really, like one batting practice setup with some variation. You have one set of bullpen drills or pitching drills with some variation. All right. I think it's important. I would rather have one drill that covers more topics or more aspects than a bunch of individual drills that cover the aspects individually, because you have to set it up. You might have to move around. You might have to explain it, if you have to go over it again. So to recap, some of my main tips here: for each drill, use a timer on your cell phone or on a watch or on a stopwatch or an Apple Watch. Use a timer, or have somebody, a parent or a PO or an assistant or grad assistant, use the timer, or have a timer over on the side of the field, like a big timer that everybody can see with a little horn on it if you can afford that. Number 2, time all transitions between drills. And number 3, only use the best drills for each skill. All right, you guys, this has been episode 41. We talked with Colter about creating a more athletic pitcher. And in this last part, we talked about allocating time appropriately for every skill, for each skill. So the key question there was, how much practice time should each training drill or each skill be allotted? And it's not going to be the same. Now, the only 2 that are really close would be hitting and pitching, because your hitters are going to see roughly about the same amount of pitches. Hopefully, you're going to see more than the other team throughout the course of the season because you're doing better, but you're roughly going to see as many pitches as you are going to throw. And then what goes with throwing is also the catcher. Now, the catcher isn't catching every single throw because there's going to be balls fouled off and put in play. So the catching would be a little bit lower, and pitching comes first. Catching is a lot easier if the pitcher's already dialed in. Okay. So there's a lot of stuff there that we covered I think is super important. You guys take care of yourself, and we'll see you next Tuesday here on the 80-20 Baseball Masterclass, the 80-20 Baseball Podcast. And until then, take care of yourself, especially your health. Take care of your family. Go make the baseball community better. And if you wouldn't mind, leave a quick review on your way out here on the Apple Podcast or on all the great podcast platforms that you may be using. It would be much appreciated. This has been Coach Bo. Take care now.
This has been the 80-20 Baseball Podcast. Take it to the field.